Welcome, lovely listener, to BBC Radio London's Breakfast Show with me, Vanessa Feltz. The time, 9:05 on Wednesday, the 30th of August. Facebook's co-founder Mark Zuckerberg has urged his young daughter to play outside and enjoy the wonders of being a child. This is in a letter posted on his social media site. The letter was published on Monday to announce the birth of his second child. Her name is August, with his wife Priscilla Chan. The parents speak about the magic of childhood and the importance of play. Let me read you a little of the letter. The world can be a serious place. That's why it's important to make time, listen to this, to go outside and play. Mark Zuckerberg continues, "You'll be busy when you're older, so I hope you take time to smell all the flowers and put all the leaves you want in your bucket now. Childhood is magical. You only get to be a child once, so don't spend it worrying too much about the future. You've got us for that, and we'll do everything we possibly can to make sure the world's a better place for you and all children in your generation. Love, Mum and Dad." Now, you may think that is insufferably schmaltzy and it makes you want to vom, or you may think that's absolutely adorable and it's exactly the kind of thing you wanted to say to your own child and possibly did when you gave birth. You may think there's something a little ironic about the inventor of Facebook telling his child to go outside and play, to smell all the flowers and collect all the leaves. Maybe you think he's absolutely right. Let's go to Paul Hocker from London Play. So what do you make of that letter of advice to August?
Yeah, it's heavy on the schmaltz, that's for sure. But I think the sentiment is very good, actually. He's in charge of the greatest communication machine in the world, and he's putting out a message that really does need to be heard. Childhood should be spent in the main outside, having everyday adventures, not stuck inside. And there is, of course, the irony that he's part of the big machine that does keep people inside, facing their screens and not being active. But I think on balance, it's a really good message, and I'd like him to send that letter to every parent in the UK.
I mean, lots of parents in London will say, well, it's all very well for Zuckerberg. You know, he's made a huge financial success of life. You know, he can afford to buy acres and acres of land for his daughter August to roam about in and collect as many leaves as she likes, knowing there won't be nasty dogs or prowling paedophiles or horrible traffic. You know, all very well for August Zuckerberg to be out in the garden wafting around, looking at butterflies and smelling the flowers. Not so viable, they may think, for their own children here in London. We know that the number of hours children spend playing out has dwindled and dwindled until some barely go out at all in London these days.
Yeah, children aged under 15 in our great city number about 1.5 million. And every day of that number, 300,000 won't play outside at all.
Right.
They won't be out collecting leaves in buckets. They'll be stuck inside. Oddly, you know, we used to be the at the forefront of children playing outside. We used to have a huge number of free adventure playgrounds where children could play outside. Lots of boroughs had local play associations. This is only 10 years ago I'm talking about. Yeah. And now, because of funding, they've all dwindled. But talking of letters, I'll be writing to Mr. Zuckerberg, because he talks about in the letter a better place for his child and for all children in your generation. So I will write to him and say, can you give us a couple of quid for some of these charities in the UK to keep going to support children to play outside. I
mean, do you think there's some kind of supreme irony here in being the person who unleashes, or you could put it this way, inflicts Facebook on the world? I mean, it's true, nobody had to take it up if they didn't like it. It's true, it's been hugely popular because people love it. That's absolutely true. But is there something ironic about the inventor and creator of Facebook saying to his little girl, I want you to play outside, when everybody else's children, it seems, are glued to social media inside? I mean, has he stopped? Is he to some extent responsible for imprisoning our children in this virtual world, which means that they don't go outside partly?
Yeah, I think you could make that argument and make it quite persuasive. I'd rather see face to Facebook, to be honest. Children, I mean, you talked before about having loads of acres for the child to roam. Yeah. But really, the key thing that children get from playing out is socialising, is meeting children, other children, and learning how to cooperate with them. So it's all very well having all that space. We need the face-to-face book. We need children to be given space to get to know each other, to play, to be creative, to invent, to experiment together. Yep. So, yeah, the irony's there, but what are you going to do? You know, this is the age we live in. We live in an age full of weird ironies, and we just have to We just have to manage them, really.
I also wonder, Paul, as we always introduce you as Paul Hocker from London Play, what you would say to London parents listening to this rather wistfully maybe and thinking, oh God, I'd love my child to be outside. I can't think of anything nicer than my child smelling flowers and collecting leaves. But it's just not practical because maybe I'm working all the time. I haven't got a chance. My child's in daycare or at school and after school club and before school club. And the park near us is a bit ominous and dangerous and the traffic's pretty bad and the weather also today isn't all that nice. How am I going to bring this about? How am I going to get my child outside to play?
Well, it's how far we've sort of slid, really, in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, it would have been quite remarkable that Mark Zuckerberg was saying this, or this particular point about children playing outside. But we've come to a point where children's lives are so interior, they're so screen-based, that this is quite a bit of a kind of, revolution, really. The thing with Zuckerberg is he does have a huge platform to communicate, and he's provided us with a platform to communicate, and that's a valuable thing. I would say to London's parents, if your child isn't outside for at least 2 hours every day playing with their mates locally, you might want to think about that. And there's some ways they can engineer that. They could run a play street. I've talked about this in your programme before, but they could, with their neighbours, set up a play street where they shut the road to traffic for a few hours and all the kids on the street can play. They could do that. In Lambeth, where the local authority were shutting an adventure playground, all the parents got together and residents in the area, and they've now reopened the playground themselves so they can take action like that. They should just be also just aware that children need to have the space to experiment and to make mistakes to learn from and not to jump in too quickly. So it's also a change of in your mindset, really, of giving children a little bit more license to play out. Society isn't this big, scary place that the media might have you believe. Most people are very good, and they're not going to run off with your child, and that's the greater majority. The chances, if you were to leave your child outside a supermarket to be abducted, the chances, and this is based on real numbers, the chance of that child being taken, you'd have to wait 600,000 years for your child to be kidnapped.
But let me ask you one more thing, which follows on very much from what you've just said, Paul, and this is in the letter. He says to his daughter, August, if anybody was just joining us on the radio, we're talking about Mark Zuckerberg, the creator of Facebook's letter to his brand new daughter, August. And one of the things he says is, don't worry, doesn't he? He says, childhood is magical. You only get to be a child once, so don't spend it worrying too much about the future. You've got us for that, and we'll do everything we possibly can to make sure the world's a better place for you and all children in your generation. And I know this isn't strictly your province, but of course you're absolutely dealing with children day in, day out with London Play. Do you think that we as parents are maybe inflicting too much information on our children? So, they might actually be worrying about North Korea. They might be worrying about Brexit. They might be worrying about all kinds of things, the flood in Texas. Do you think they might be worrying about our own financial problems or even our marital problems? When he says, don't worry, you've got us for that, do you think that we have sort of forgotten about boundaries which could protect children from things that we as adults are worrying about?
Yeah, I think when I was growing up, there was the news at 9 o'clock, and you would be in bed by the time that came, and all the horrors of humanity were on that. But now you can be in your tablet, and the child can see you looking at it and see a picture, because all the media's picture-led, and go, what's that about? But I see it in my own child and how his mates are at school. Trump, for instance, is very big, very alive in their world. He's a bit like a pantomime baddie. And they do deal with it, and they do process it. And if you, as a parent, can respond honestly, openly, but tactfully, obviously, it's how you return that information as a child. I think they can deal with it. I think it's when they're left with images unexplained or things they've heard unexplained. That's the problem. And it's just I think 9/11 was that first time when that saturation of those images, children saw it, and parents had to reach for a way to explain that. I think that's the modern world we live in. It's very sad, but we can steer children through that, I think.
Well, thank you, Paul, very much indeed. Paul Hocker there from London Play, responding to the letter from Facebook creator Mark Zuckerberg to his newly born daughter, August.